Hello and welcome to yet another new episode of the potentially decreasingly sporadic Madaxeman podcast. This time we're joined by a whole band of people who cycle in and out all the way through the podcast, but part of that's to do with the fact we recorded in an afternoon, and we talk about the usual stuff, painting, we talk about games we played, but in an exciting new development we chat about the latest hotness, the potential for a new version 5 of ADLG and what we'd like to see in it. So sit back and enjoy this podcast.
This means war.
Well, this is a rare event. It's an almost annual edition of the Madaxeman podcast, but perhaps we'll do some more if we get into it. Possibly if the hay fever season gets any worse, none of us will be able to leave our houses. So we might be back to de facto lockdown or something like that without even trying to do it. But I'm joined here by Dave from the podcast, Andy from his kitchen, and Gordon from the bunker of armies, all there. There's a possibility other people might join us, but we're not entirely sure on that because we're doing some codgering and recording mid-afternoon, which is delightful, which is very delightful. So I guess in the traditional way of starting this, we've kind of got three segments to cover. We've kind of got the what have we painted. We've got the what happened when we played in competitions and events last and what's coming up. We do have Andy's quiz, which is the fourth segment. And then there's an extra bit because one of our normal erstwhile number, Grandpa Alan, has been over in Barcelona at the Worlds this past weekend and was told by no less a luminary than Hervé El Kreator himself that the very early stages of looking at a version 5 of ADLG is actually that process is sort of grinding into action. And I know Hervé does not rush this, and the fact that it now ends up having to be translated into what English, French, Italian, Spanish, and German, and probably American as well these days. Probably doesn't mean it's not the quickest process, but it does get done. But we thought that's so exciting that prompted us all to get together and record some nonsense for you. But without further ado, I guess Gordon, you appear to be the man who's most on my screen at the moment, which is a bit weird. What have you been up to on the old painting and buying front recently? What's your story?
I'm trying not to buy more stuff.
Yeah, but trying is a word that doesn't normally really mean much in wargaming context.
It doesn't work totally. What I have realised, especially in the last 2 years, is that buying stuff that's neatly but very inadequately painted on eBay, that's a real bargain, with the intention of tarting it up so it's presentable, isn't really time efficient. It takes longer to paint them that way than starting from scratch. On the other hand, the lead often costs a lot less buying stuff that's already based and got a head start on colours. So I realised this when I did my Burgundian army for the Scottish Open at the beginning of the year. It took me absolutely ages. And I'm realising again with the Ilkhanid army that I'd be taking to campaign in a couple of days' time, which is still not finished.
Oh, right.
It's getting close to...
Are you Mackie in disguise?
Sorry, Andy?
Are you Mackie in disguise?
I am not, no.
This is it. Gordon, you're not a Facebook person. We mean Phil Mackey, who is legendary for painting his armies at the very, very last minute in 28mm.
Well, Dave Allen is also legendary for flocking and basing them on the morning before we set out to drive to the competition.
Yeah, it's a good job. If you were driving, and he would be doing it in the passenger seat, I'm sure.
I have done that. I have done some flocking in the passenger seat. I'm also thinking ahead to BritCon, so I'm painting some Mamluks and Scots Isles and Highlanders and Samurai for devices. But again, with this thing of, I had a huge fog Renaissance army for Samurai, which I'm repurposing. And I can see it's going to take me quite a while to do that.
Yeah, to do that. Is that 15s or 28s?
Oh, yeah, that's 15. Yeah, I've only painted one 25mm army this year, and that was for Plymouth.
Okay.
I'll wait until next year before I try another one.
A mere bagatelle. And are you so Are you going to start buying figures with a view to stripping them then, or are
I
you
am
just going to
seriously
choose to buy
thinking
stuff
of the
differently?
next big job like that. I will strip the figures. Yes,
Right.
that might be
Okay.
the Highlanders who get stripped down to under their kilts.
Right. Okay. Okay. The new. All right then. Interesting stuff. Well, Mr. Saunders, then you're as usual, literally painting in the dark there, and waving stuff at the camera with your new funky light as well. They look like some form of Mongol type horse people.
Sassanids.
Sassanids. Oh, the Sassanids have started. Oh, this is
Yeah.
our epic convoluted eBay purchase
Yes.
through other stuff.
Yes, because they were cheaper before the price rise. So I've actually
Yeah,
started on the light horse.
the legendary Forged in Battle price rise of
Yes,
we're just putting it through at nearly 50% increase, which I think makes them the most expensive figures on the market. Um,
quite rightly.
Quite rightly, yeah. But then you pick some more up at in Dorset, I think, as well.
No, I didn't actually get any more there because I thought about it, but I might be going back to get some more from Entoyment because they still
Yeah.
in selling the lot. I shouldn't be saying this to us; they'll be all be gone by the time I go and look. I've ended up with 3 forged in battle packets of light horse or medium horse, which means
Hmm.
I'm going to have at least 6 bases of medium cavalry and at
Are they
least
bubble
20
head? Have they got
bases.
bubble heads though? If they're Sassanids,
Yeah, they've got some. Well, what I've done is I didn't realise because I bought the starter army and that gave me 2 packets of bubble-headed light horse or medium
hmm.
cavalry, which I didn't realise. I thought we just 1 packet, so I bought an extra packet of Parthian light horse to mix in with them. So I don't
Hmm.
know if you can see that one there. Look,
Oh
one's
yeah,
got a
yeah.
bubble head and the other one's got a Phrygian cap.
It's got a Scythian Phrygian cap.
And a
Yeah.
nice
Okay.
wrap over tunic.
Exactly, and a Rappo. So it sort of varies them up. So they're not all bubble heads.
No. Okay. That's good.
So that was the kind of idea. So I've mixed them in bubblehead and blah blah blah, which is I think that's quite good because I think they would look more Parthian as much. Really, I don't think the bubbleheads are accurate at all. But then
Yeah.
that's
I
what
think they are.
Sassanids are, aren't they?
And I'm quoting from a doctoral thesis I read on tiaras, headgear, and helmets of the early Sasanian Empire.
Ooh.
Is this an Osprey book? Is it, or a doctoral
No, I don't.
thesis?
No, it's black and white drawings by the author, but
Oh,
based on stones he found and things.
right. Maybe there's a whole Alice Roberts series to do of in which
So what was
she's
the
followed around by
thesis? The
legions of
thesis said it's bollocks. Didn't it?
Specifically headgear.
The
specifically
thesis.
headgear.
So the thesis said it's bollocks, did it?
No, it said these were some of the kinds of headgear that were worn.
And what are they? Caps? They're not helmets. So
They're not helmet. Oh no, they're caps.
So they're sort of. How did they get their bubble heads to be bubbly?
They're just a bit stiffer than the earlier caps, which were very, very floppy. And you got into trouble if you made them stand up because that was something above your rank.
I thought the bubble heads were just from the images, the Khosrowi's frescoes on the mountainside.
Oh, those are helmets.
Yeah, but I thought that's where the bubble heads come from.
No, there's loads of other stuff.
Okay.
But so that there are sources that come from before Armies and Enemies of Ancient Rome by P. Barker.
Or that the WRG wasn't aware of. Yeah.
That wasn't aware of. That's an interesting question that we'll probably come back to
Send me a
later
link
again.
to
Then.
this.
I think you need to strike a note of caution very often because, particularly with Napoleonic uniforms, and it probably also applies to earlier eras, if somebody's drawn a picture of a distinctive uniform or of whatever detail, you don't know whether that's a typical appearance of those kind of guys or a slightly unique and bespoke one, which is why they made a picture of it in the first place.
I suppose so. Yeah. Or maybe the people just had massive heads. Do you think that's a possibility as well? Anybody with that one?
Yes.
Possibly not. All right. So, Dave,
I need a link to this. Perhaps we could put this in the link into the website, into the podcast.
Yep. If you can remember where it was, we'll find it. See where there'll be
Finally
just
put
a
the
spike
bobblehead
in
to bed
traffic.
forever.
A spike in traffic of almost dozens of people onto this one academic obscure website about hats. Did it give any clues about colour? Or
I didn't read far enough into that. There was things, conjectures about colours, but they were more conjectures about what was feasible in the way of dyeing.
and but you didn't dive to that. There weren't it
I
weren't Vallejo
It wasn't
references or
written by
anything like that.
Dave Allen.
I probably gave up around page 500.
Right.
Sure, you
Okay.
sure this thesis wasn't written by Dave Allen himself?
He's
No,
not that
I don't
old.
think
He's not that
he would
old.
be translating it from Iranian.
Yes, quite
Oh, so it's an
possibly.
Iranian thesis. Wow. Okay, yeah, that's amazing.
Okay, all right.
Oh, I
So,
haven't
Dave, is
known.
that your main? Has that been your main painting thing? Because you lost a bit of painting mojo for a while, or
I
I have.
couldn't sit down because after I broke my back, it was really difficult to sit for any length of time. I'm now able to sit and paint for an hour at a time, then have to
okay,
get and walk around.
right, okay,
So I would love to have painted, but it was just too painful.
just too tricky. And
No, I
Dave,
lost my mojo definitely for a bit, but and I started off with these light horse painting them all sort of like buff. I sort of I did for an undercoat. We're not. I didn't I undercoated them white. Then I sort of
yeah,
painted them yellow and went, oh my god, that looks ridiculous. Then I sort of put a buff cream colour over that and went, it still looks like they're all a bit weird. So then I've gone white over the top of the buff, and it's come out really well because you can sort of still see the. I guess Richard would say this is his 3 layers sort of thing because you can just about see the sort of like what's underneath it. So they come out really well. So the light horse are all going to be white-ish sort of thing,
whitish.
and then the
Yeah,
heavy cavalry, the barded cavalry are going to be quite colourful, I think.
yeah. Well, doing the white is a tricky thing. I've just done some 28 mil Spanish. I think they'll appear on the website in the next few days, but they they're the Victrix figures, which are really brilliantly animated. And I did my usual thing, well, what's becoming my usual thing for white, which is white undercoat, then give them a coat of the speed paint Holy White, which is kind of grey and goes into the. Oh, you've got a contrast paint as well, yeah. You've got a contrast paint that's the same one, Soul Blight Grey there.
Make a
Oh,
note
I,
of
bright
that.
grey.
yeah, I use Holy White from Army Painter, and then I actually did something completely weird because I'd got 4 of the AK paint pens about a year ago, red, black, white, and yellow, to see how they worked, and they're sort of thick felt tips. They look like they yeah, you've got it. They look like they've got a fine point, but I didn't find they were sharp enough to actually do proper detail.
Mm.
They're actually painting pens. So with these Spanish, I tried to do them with the paint pens. So gave them kind of this base coat of the Holy White, and then did the white on top of it, just with rubbing over with the paint pen. And because it's kind of a thick felt tip, it actually works quite well because it can't fit into the little creases, and
I
and the
see.
paint coverage on the AK white isn't it's not great first time out, so you need multiple coats. So it does almost accidentally build up a kind of layering if you do it a few times to get to a more stronger white. So, and then I did there's some which are in yellow because I picked up again down in Entoyment. I picked up another one paint pen because I thought it might be good for highlighting of where's it gone? Where's it gone? Of wood base, RM RCM 012 wood base that is kind of a beigey yellow, and did that on top of white with Agaros Dunes, which is a Games Workshop shade, to do the same sort of effect. And it's worked out really well for them. Like I'm kind of like, really? Did I do that? That sort of good. So yeah, there'll be some pictures of those, but there was only 18 of them. There were only 3 bases because I picked up some odd sprues of them rather than buying the whole pack of absolutely hundreds that Victrix tend to put in those bags. I only needed 3 bases to go with a Republican Roman army. So that's been kind of a real highlight. And then I've got a load in process of some Warlord games That's not showing really. These are kind of resin figures, flexible resin that I picked up in their bargain box on their stand at Devises last year. It's basically just a load of slingers for a barbarian army, because I just think when I finally get around to do my 28mm barbarians, I'll need some slinger bow people, and they're interchangeable really. And then last couple of days, I've just blitzed the 90% print red copper camels that Harry had printed out. I spent ages and ages and ages on the full scale ones, printed 100% and did them in great detail. But he'd given me another set at 90% as well. And just the thought of doing them with that degree of care again, to do the same figures twice was just beyond me. So they've been sat there staring at me for a while. But then, having done this kind of paint pen thing, I thought actually I can do them all in kind of white really, and do most of it in white for that. So I just blitzed them, and to be honest, unfortunately, from tabletop distances, they look sort of the same. I can't really see the fact that I've done them quite badly and quite rushed. So I've clearly wasted all my time on the previous one, which is somewhat self-destroying.
No, but those camels look really, really good. So you used a single contrast paint over white to do those camels.
Yeah,
I think that's come out superbly well, because there's so much detail on the figures.
Yeah, it really.
You can see the individual hairs where there's bunches of hair, and then stuff pools down at the bottom of the leg when it's really, really thick, and that looks even better.
Yeah, no, I did. I used. There's like 2 or 3 of these contrast paints. There's Agaros Dunes, Dark Oath Flesh, Skeleton Horde. They're all slightly different tints of yellowy brown, and then I just, I even slap on the straps with the Army Painter hardened leather contrast, because that sort of black lines itself. And again, if you look closely, you can see where it's kind of slopped over onto the camel, but you've got to look pretty closely because it's all different shades of brown anyway. And then it kind of picks them up. So I'm irritatingly pleased with those, because it means I've sort of wasted my time doing more clever 3-layer paints on the previous set. So that's kind of where I'm at. And when they are done, it will go into the to be painted pile, and have a rather large session of prepping and sticking to lollipop sticks, and then take advantage of the good weather to undercoat probably about 2 armies worth of 15mm stuff. That I've got some Romans, I've got some stuff I bought in the museum sale. I've got a kind of steppy cavalry army it's not Scythians, it's Sarmatians, but I'm sure they'll appear as all sorts of other things, because I flogged off some old ones. So there'll just be all sorts to do really, once I get these ones finished and based. And I've also actually, if anybody's got a large-ish sort of heavy artillery Roman ballista in 15mm kicking around, I bought some of the Donington artillery crew, which are great little figures, and I painted them up, and then I've realised I don't actually have a ballista to go with them that's actually of any scale. Or maybe I just do it as an ordinary ballista. I've got a small one, but not a larger one. But
I think I've got a gigantic Greek one, but it's also got some crew. And it's so big
surplus
that it hangs over.
It's so big it looks ridiculous. Yeah. I think the big ones look
really nice.
Yeah, but the big ones just look odd. They look like you've put a 28mm figure, a 28mm ballista on a 15mm base, and I know that's kind of right, but it just looks rubbish.
Well, not sure hold that thought, because what I've always used is the Zyston. They're sort of more like catapults rather than ballistas. Yeah. And they fit on the bases much more effectively.
Okay.
Although they've got a giant torsion stone throw. Zyston. That's quite a good one for artillery. But
stone throw would be cool.
I'm going to put another Khorasan order. Yeah, but I'm going to put another Khorasan order, and they've got in there, I think it's their Tang or their Sung range, they've got a torsion artillery piece, which looks like it goes 40 by 40.
All right, no, that'd be cool. That may be the solution then. That would be good.
I want one to copy Inyaki's world's
almost successful list. Yeah.
This means war.
Andy, finally to you in your kitchen. What have you been painting? Has it been Koreans? Have they, or is that so far in the past that you've forgotten that and you're on to something else?
I've finished the Koreans, apart from some repairs I need to do, because you just look at them and the spears snap off, which is
Yeah,
frustrating. I've
yeah.
kind of managed to salvage
Although
enough
I've seen that Mick Hood reckons that the resin he's using is actually good enough to work and not snap off. So I think those ones you got from, same as my camels, they got from Harry, and you're right, that they are pretty brittle and you've got to be careful of
Yeah.
them. But
That's the only downside. I mean, they're beautiful figures, those
mm,
those Koreans that he printed off.
yeah,
So I've finished them, and I'm kind of doing bits for sort of fillers at the moment. So I've just started getting into a Napoleonic set called La Salle,
mm,
which I'm playing with Dave Lynch, and I bought a British Army from Pete Lowe's estate at
yeah,
Bournemouth from the guys, and it had everything apart from artillery men. It had the artillery pieces and limbers, but not gunners to go with it. So I bought some artillery men from a company called Skill Balls Miniatures, who print them as,
okay,
I think, a resin or plastic or something, and they're
yeah.
on the internet. And the figures themselves are quite nice for what they are.
Mm.
Um,
Are
and
they proper? Are they designed as 15s or are they upscaled from 10s?
No, I think they're proper 15s, but I think he also does them in 28. He does mainly Napoleonics, although if you look at his website, which I did the other day, he's branched out now into other stuff. He does
Yeah.
warships, which he can do in different scales for you, and he can do. He's just started doing Spartans and some Roman gladiators in 28 mil. So I'm guessing
Okay.
he'll probably expand those out. But I got some 15 mil Napoleonic French, and so I've just finished the British 15 mil artillery men, which cost me a tenner for all the guys I needed. So it worked
Okay.
out about 40p a figure, and they're decent. I mean, they're not world class,
Yeah.
but they're good enough and they've got enough detail on them. I think I sent you a photo of something I'd
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
attacked with
So
a
which
paint.
so how many sets of Napoleonic rules is this that you've now moved through in, let's say, the last 5 years? Is the third, fourth? I know it's the traditional way to approach Napoleonics, to attempt to use a
Yeah, I
different
mean,
rule set every
yeah,
time.
well, for Napoleonic gamers, the fundamental truth you need to understand is there is no perfect set of rules.
Yeah.
It's like the Holy Grail. You're always looking for something which you think will, tick your emotional box as to what you think Napoleonic warfare was like. And so these LaSalles are kind of scope in to an army. The army you use is basically a division, either fighting a small battle or within the confines of a larger battle. So, if you want to do Waterloo with it, that's not the rule set for doing it with.
Yeah.
But it does have some clever mechanics and things like that. So I think the short answer is probably fourth or fifth set. But
Okay.
they do different things at different command
Okay.
levels.
All right. So it's actually all the sets you play do something different, but it's just which scale you want to, or which level you want to play at any one time.
Yeah, I mean, Blucher is sort of strategic scale. I
Yeah.
think you may have played that, where your units are essentially brigades. In this LaSalle one, they are battalions. And I've got Bataille Empire too, but I haven't actually read through it or done anything with it yet. And that's also the same scale.
Yeah.
Um,
And then there's obviously Ian's thing as well, isn't there? Emperor.
yeah, yeah. There's things about Ian's rules which I don't particularly like. That's not saying they're no good, because
Yeah.
a lot of people play them, a lot of people enjoy them. Bit like saying these are steak, I prefer salad. So
Yeah.
I'm not in
Yeah.
any way
Yeah.
slagging off Ian's rules.
Yeah.
It's just there's aspects of them
Yeah.
which don't particularly chime with what I like.
Yeah. But
My
steak is better
perspective
than
how it
salad,
should
though, isn't it? Generally, I think that's not really up for debate, isn't it?
If
When
it's
it's,
kosher, yes, but
yes, I
sometimes the
suppose so.
salad is very nice. Yeah.
Right.
Um,
Okay. Yeah. Didn't even know that's
yeah,
kosher.
that's not a
More.
complication you need to worry about. So there you
Yeah.
go.
No, I don't need to worry about that complication at all.
Yeah,
All right. Okay
welcome
then.
to my world. No, right.
Good.
So I've been painting these Napoleonic artillery men, and I've actually been using some of the paint pens for that. And interesting, you
Hmm.
were talking about Holy White, because I didn't actually have a white pen, I've been
Yeah.
using Vallejo white paint. So I thought down at Enjoyment, oh, we've got a white here. I'll buy that one, Holy White, and I got it back and I started using it, and it's grey. I describe
Yeah.
it as mid-grey rather than white.
Yeah.
So I'm not
Absolutely.
sure how
Yeah.
that chimes with the Trade Descriptions Act, but it
Yeah.
wasn't the sort of white that I thought it might be.
Yeah. No, well, that's a contrast paint. So I think it's really good as a base coat for actual white
I
because
think that's a
it
good
gives you
thing. Yeah.
shading into the bits. Those um yeah, those Spanish that I posted pictures of, we've done. If you look at the shading, that's a base
Yeah,
coat of Holy White with a white, solid white AK paint pen on top to do it.
right.
So yeah, that's what I use it for. But I wouldn't use it as to paint it and say this is white because you're right,
No,
it's too grey.
that's where I
Yeah,
got
but that
tripped
bit
up.
of doing the grey lines for the shading, I'm just not technically astute
Yeah,
enough to do that. But
no, no.
this sort of cheats and does it quite well. Okay,
Yeah, no.
all right.
I know. I normally undercoat in uh, Coat Dimes grey primer anyway, because I think it's a nice
Okay,
balance between having your stuff too bright and being able to see what you're painting.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. I think
but
that
I
the
can see
undercoat
that
in white and
Holy
then
White would be a useful undercoat color. I mean, I actually used
yeah,
it for the trousers for my Roy Horse Artillery figures because it's suitably dark enough grey for that.
okay, interesting stuff.
Um, so that's what I've been painting at the moment, and then after that, I'm just probably going to go through the drawers and say what have I got that I haven't painted yet. I mean, I've got some 10mm fantasy stuff which I bought at Devisors last year, which I never got around to painting, so I might do some of that if Simon and I ever get back to playing fantasy
Yeah,
again and trying to work out the rules.
yeah. There's just too
Um,
many things to play, isn't there? Really, that's the
yeah.
challenge.
Just in
It's too
time to
much.
go back to devices and buy some more.
Yeah,
No, I don't think I need to buy any more because, as I said, at the moment, I mean, instinctively, I'm not intending to buy any more armies because if I
right.
think of, oh yeah, I wouldn't mind buying that army, I think, am I ever likely to take it to a competition? If the answer is no, then I think no, let's not
All
buy
right.
it
Okay.
until the lead mountain is a bit lower.
Yeah. Well, I've now after Dorset, I've now used 65 different armies from the ADLG army list book. So 10 more to go, and I'll have done 1 in 4, which I think is is quite a target to go for. So we'll have to see if I can get to that before we get to another stage and they all kind of chop and change. But on that point, there's probably time to take a quick musical interlude, and then we'll come back and talk about events that we've been to recently.
This means war. This means war.
Well, yes, events. We've been out and about, haven't we? I can't even remember when the last time is we did one of these. So we must have all done several events. But looking around, I think we all took part in the second midweek branded competition to take place in the UK for old gits. Paul's Dorset Dodderers down in Poole in Dorset in the absolutely fantastic and really nice in every way, really, Entoyment Gaming Centre. So that was just, well, maybe we just talk about how good that was to start with. If I'm assuming that everybody thinks sort of similarly to it. So yeah, what do we think, guys? Well,
I thought I thought Entoyment is excellent. I think it's a great space. I mean, they've changed the dress, haven't they? So they've got
yeah,
an actual played there. I think I played there 3 times at their old place.
yeah, and it was an upstairs, wasn't it? The gaming was upstairs, and it was a small shop downstairs.
That's right, but they were quite good because the tables were sort of inset. It's
Hmm.
like a crap table in a
Yeah,
casino.
yeah,
So your dice didn't bounce off the table
didn't
and you
escape.
around. But this place is much, 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 much bigger. Huge, in
Yeah.
fact. I mean,
In fact,
it's like
the aisles in the shop are almost designed for wargamers with backpacks, aren't they? It's
yes,
just like
large war gamers with
with
backpacks.
backpacks. Yeah, no, absolutely. They've
Multiple
got
large war gamers with
gamers
them.
with backpacks and doing it. Yeah, parking was a bit so-so until we worked out we could just park anywhere on the industrial estate because it was
Don't
midweek.
tell him that.
No, nobody would know. But a midweek thing, and it was pretty quiet midweek. I guess it gets busier at the weekends, but yeah, it was bright. It was. I can imagine it might be cold in the winter, but we seem to be sort of unseasonably nice weather as well in what was sort of early mid-April.
Yeah,
And
like Milton Keynes, but without the alternative food arrangements.
yeah, well, but even the food was decent. I had a pizza there, and I think I had something else one day, and it wasn't just sort of here's a crap burger with onions that we've got out of a packet, which is the case with several gaming centres. It was almost like the food was actually proper stuff as well, and those little buzzers that you could come and get it.
Yeah,
It was all good.
the staff were nice. Well,
Yeah,
very friendly,
everything was
very
good. Yeah.
helpful. Yeah.
So
Well,
they
what
had
about
to
the games? What about the games, Andy? You're on screen now. What did you take? Because the theme was, what was it, 493 to 10 something?
Yeah,
Um,
but no heavy nights or foot nights.
but no foot
No
nights or
nights or
medium,
foot
no
nights.
nights
Yeah,
or foot nights.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I took the Koreans I'd spent so much time painting,
Hmm.
and if I came fifth. I mean, Paul says he came fourth, but he wasn't counting his score because he, apart from
Yeah.
playing you because your opponent had cried off because of illness, he
Hmm.
then played the people who are at the bottom so they wouldn't miss out on a game.
Yeah.
So he wasn't counting his score as part of the competition. So technically, that would mean that I finished fourth, which I was very happy with. I had 3 wins and a draw. I managed
Wow.
to get the army to work, which is good because I'm thinking I might take it to Lisbon because it's so
Hmm.
light, being the
Oh, right.
not metal.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I suppose there's the risk of breakages. So what was your Korean army then? And what were your opponents who it did well against? What made
Right,
it
I was
work?
using Silla Korean, and having had a number of mishaps in practice, which Gordon and Dave will confirm, I changed it so that it was primarily a heavy foot army. It had a mounted wing of three elite cataphracts with an included ordinary commander, and then 2 infantry corps, one with 2 impact cavalry and one with 2 light cavalry, and they were led by a strategist. So that was and so most of the troops were heavy sword polearm, and there was two crossbows and 2 mixed bow sword. And so and a couple of pikemen, because in a certain era the Silla Koreans can have
Hmm.
pikes, and it was basically march up the middle and say you want to charge me, have a go. Well,
Because
first,
polearm is a bit of an unloved, or sort of sometimes an unloved troop type, isn't it? How did you find having an army that majored on polearm worked, or were they just not
well,
not all of it?
in a theme without knights, it actually went quite well because it meant that anything on a horse that charged heavy foot, the only factor they've got is impact in the first round.
Hmm.
So, leaving aside quality differences, my foot with a polearm is one up against
Okay.
mounted guys in the first round, and if I win, the polearm cancels their armor anyway.
Okay. So they're good in theme, good in period against taking on armored step
Yeah,
cavalry.
yeah,
Wowee.
absolutely. And uh, first game was against Ian Sewell using Goryeo Korean, a slightly later version,
Yeah.
and I won that one. The second was against, I can't remember the guy's name, but he was fairly new to competitions.
Hmm.
He was from that Southampton. I can't remember his name. Really nice chap. But his inexperience, I think,
Told.
worked against him.
Hmm.
Third game was against the Nicaforian army, and I can't remember the guy's name. Local guy, but he actually beat me.
Okay.
And then on the next day, I had, which I thought was the best result of the lot, which was a draw against Richard Case. Because all the times I've played Richard over since I've joined the club, I'd only ever once not lost to him. So
Okay.
getting a
That's the
draw
result
against
then.
Richard was a red letter day for me.
Yeah.
Um,
Fantastic.
I think he was a bit frustrated by it, but he's been talking to me since, so I think he's calmed down.
Oh, it
And
wasn't too bad yet.
and in the last game was against Colin Whitaker, who had a flank march which didn't turn up, by which time I'd crunched what was on the table.
Excellent. So that's a key skill of the Koreans, outnumbering the opponents through non-arriving flank marches.
Well, somewhat bizarrely, his flank march was all light cavalry, and it still didn't
And it
turn up for
still
5
didn't turn up.
turns.
Oh my God.
It's
How
quite
remarkable.
spectacular die rolling to achieve that.
No, that's bonkers, isn't it? All right. Okay. Well, we'll move on to the next person.
This means war.
Dave, this period is sort of a sweet spot for your Byzantines normally, isn't it?
Well,
Many
it was a bit
Byzantine
of a
armies.
Byzantine off, wasn't it?
It was. There was a lot. If you put any period that the Nicephorians are allowed in, that's
Yeah.
always quite attractive, isn't it? As we know from Burton earlier this year.
Yeah, I mean, I felt quite lazy because I think I didn't put enough effort in. I think I was planning on other things like Pamplona and things like that, so I didn't really put enough effort. So I just went to an old standby dynastic Bedouin, Nicephorian army with a dynastic Bedouin ally, which is one of my favourite armies and my
Hmm.
favourite piece of history and sort of thing. So I took that, which I freely admit was quite lazy. And I played the eventual winner in the first game.
Right. Okay.
It was Kevin.
Kevin Bruin. No, not Kevin.
Yeah.
Sorry, Kevin. Yeah.
Yes, Kevin.
And
Yeah.
that was your closest brush with the podium.
Yeah.
Well, it was indeed. I felt when I started off, I thought I've got a plan. I feel really confident. He's Indians. Okay, he'll have elephants. Okay, he might have heavy cavalry, but I thought I'll stay mounted. I'll drive off his Lightfoot with my light horse. Then I'll get in and shoot the elephants and shoot his medium infantry. And if I charge the medium infantry, so be it. I've got, because I'm half lance, I thought I've got furious charges and things like that. So I thought I'll give it a go. And it was a fucking disaster. I thought it didn't help that I think we got up at 5. I got up at 5 in the morning to get down there with Tim. So we drove down at sort of 7 in the morning. And I think I was a bit tired for the first game. That's my excuse. But I thought, I've cleverly sneaked past his elephants whilst pinning the elephants to the front with a heavy cavalry and then he managed to drive me off and hit my cavalry general in the flank and kill it quite quickly, which was not a good start.
No,
and then he had the 4 heavy cavalry impact elites, and they chewed up my heavy cavalry impact elite. So I thought I was going to go around one flank. I didn't manage it. To be honest, one of the things with that was he had his medium cavalry mediocre actually did a really good piece of work. It just gave that 5 cavalry more width. And my infantry couldn't beat his infantry, so that was a bit of a non-happening. Then after that, I can't even remember what I was playing after that. I think I had a guy called Dave Edwards who I played at Bournemouth last time, someone told me he'd never played before, and it turned out he plays loads at the club, had just never been to a competition. So I gave him no respect this time and no help, and I kicked that one over, Mr. David Edwards. I think I owe you one on that one. So I did quite well after that. Ian Sewell, I think I played Ian Sewell and beat that up. Ian didn't know some of the tricks I was doing about when you hit something in the front, you can just move with shifts into the flank with another piece. He didn't know that one, so
whatever that means, I'm not entirely sure I know what that means.
You don't have to charge the flank to make him drop.
Yeah,
it's
the second you
it's not a charge; it's a move. Yeah, it's a move.
An ongoing melee is a move, not a charge. So it's much easier to get there, assuming they start past the flank. So it's a genuine flank attack.
Then I played Dave Allen. Yes.
Okay.
He was using my Nicephorian army because I smashed he was going to take Ghaznavids to the Worlds. So I gave the Ghaznavids a complete kicking with my army I used for this competition. So he decided to copy that, twist it, and beat me up, which was very unfair, I thought.
Oh, no. So you lost to your own army.
So I got 3 wins and 2 losses. I've not seen the results. I presume the results are only on Facebook.
No. Well, it's already uploaded to the thing. Hang on, let me just do a quick screen share.
I think they are on the forum.
Oh, did they?
It's on the
forum, did they?
There you go.
I've got no idea where I came.
Here's the results on screen share.
Can't see it.
Is that screen share? You got that there?
I can't see it. It's very small.
I can see it.
Right.
So you were sixth, but Paul doesn't
Uh,
count. So you were effectively fifth, just behind Andy by 20 points. And
uh,
then I was a mere 3 points behind you, um, as well. So let's have a look.
I think
Actually,
the
looking.
interesting was Kevin's
Yeah,
Kevin
He had
Kevin
5 wins.
Perry.
Kevin Perry, exactly. Kevin Perry.
Yeah.
He smashed 5 Byzantine armies, didn't he? With
Yes,
his in
indeed. Two Nicephorians, a Justinian, a Maurician, and a Justinian. Um,
exactly. So that was
yeah,
quite impressive.
yeah, huge, wasn't it? It
And
was
if you look at the scores as well, I mean, he's
yeah,
getting over 90 points in at least 3 of the
yeah.
games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, 85, I did joint best against him in in my defeat, which is didn't really feel that way. But yeah, there we go. So let's just have a look at my games then. So yeah, so my opponent called in sick, as you said, so I ended up playing Paul as the scratch player with his Zapotecs, which are fantastic. He's done such a good job on those tin soldier figures, which in the hands of a bad painter, which there seems to be a load of them on eBay of really poorly painted tin soldier Aztecs and stuff. But Paul's like blackline them and they look really, really, really good. So yeah, he managed to get the terrain down but it wasn't loads of difficult terrain or rough terrain, but there was enough to anchor a line of his troops between two steep hills. And so
I
all
think
I
he had
could really do
32
was
units or something, didn't he? Some
it
huge
was
force.
pretty big. Yeah, it's pretty big. So all I could really do was just line up and pile into the bit in the open and hopefully fight my way through it before all his other stuff came flooding down off these two hills and rolled me up. And it was a pretty nip and tuck thing there. So it's like 82, what's that score say? 82-28. So a good score for the Zapotecs there. But yeah,
Kevin Smith, that's the
still,
guy I played in the second game. Really
sorry?
nice guy. Kevin
Yes,
Smith.
yeah, Kevin
He's the
Smith,
one I
yeah.
played with.
And
Yeah.
then I did my sort of now becoming disturbingly traditional play a fairly equal matchup against Robin Jackson, who he also had a Justinian, but with a slightly different composition to mine. And he he hung back on one wing. He had an artillery piece in the middle that was really weird, and I overextended myself trying to chase something that I really shouldn't have chased, and got pinged a bit by the artillery, and then just got mugged when all his stuff came back, and lost that one. So I was on 1-1. Kevin, as you said, I think you played him, Andy. He thematic Byzantine, which wasn't. He's a fairly new player, and it wasn't a great composition. Hopefully, gave him some pointers for that. He had a lot of ordinary heavy cavalry. I think it was,
Yeah, that's
and
right. I don't think he had any elites or very few.
no, and so ultimately my cavalry were just better than his, and the numbers weren't able to count. And then I had a great game against Harry with his Arab conquest, which had two big commands of heavy foot that I can do very little against with a Justinian Byzantine army, and then one command that's sort of medium foot and cavalry. And with the Justinians, because it's so small, but it's got such high command and control, you've really got to be sort of surgical almost, scalpel like to get the most out of it. So I actually attacked him in the desert, which completely surprised him. But it just meant there was a couple of blobs of dunes that his foot couldn't go through and I couldn't really go through. And he didn't really have room to put them anywhere useful. So I kind of skirted around the dunes and piled into this medium foot command and just chewed that up and got the baggage, whilst all these heavy infantry desert warriors kind of chugged their way slowly across the table where they found they were facing nothing. Some of them marched through some of the sand dunes as well. And then there was an epic moment at which the elite, impetuous desert warriors had kind of marched halfway across the table. And I had two mediocre supported scutatoi who were just cowering at the back, or pretty much at the back, who they just stood there and then beat up um, like 2 or 3 units of these impetuous elite guys, just completely ridiculous dicing and stuff like that. Whilst I was just picking away the rest of it, so that was a victory for them. And then again, Dave, I did similar to you. I thought against Kevin, I didn't pack any dismounts because it's a newly painted army and I wanted to use all the cavalry as much as I could. But I thought, I'll be able to tease it out. Even if the train isn't great to start with, I'll play sort of fairly cautiously and try and pick on the cavalry, which I suspected were in the army. And I was teasing out two-thirds of the elephants. They were starting to get a bit stretched out with gaps between them. The cavalry came through on Kevin's right. I matched up against them with my better, in theory, cavalry, but the bottom line is the Byzantine cavalry are better. Not, they're still impact elite, as are the Indian ones or the Rajput type ones, but the Byzantine ones can shoot. And if the Indian cavalry charge in straight away from too close to evade away from safely, you're just in an evens matchup. And those Indian cavalry just fought much better than mine, and completely chewed up my Byzantine cavalry, which meant I didn't really have anything else material left to do much damage to the rest of the army. So yeah, great for Kevin to win that, and actually great for the classical Indians to see them perform as an army that, I don't know. Normally, when you see it, you think, okay, there's a way to beat this. As long as I do that, I'm just going to win. But it didn't really. It was just used much better, and I think having those four cavalry really made a difference. And this period being very cavalry heavy made quite a difference as well. So, but no, other than that, it was a great little event, and we had posh fish and chips. There's a rockfish down there, so it was a bit of a repeat of Brixham. Pretty decent pub to stay in. Weather was good. There's a possibility of bird watching being added onto it for next time, given all the sea eagles and all the rest of it that are lurking around down there, and the ospreys. So Dave, you may yet see an osprey linked to competition when that one repeats. And
it turns out that many of the war gamers are actually twitchers on the sly, as well as being war gamers on the sly.
It's astonishing, isn't it, that those two hobbies cross over in any way, shape, or form.
Merlin app really is just taking off in such a big way.
I must show you my stamp collection one day.
Yeah.
Yes, well, maybe that's the next thing. But you need an app for it.
Yeah, you probably do need an app for it. Okay, good. Well, that's the gaming bit, but that must bring us round to the legendary moment that everybody has been waiting for, and I think what we should do is actually have the results. Sorry, the answers at the end, because it is always now a bit of a gap between these ones. So we'll come back with the answers later. But I think it's time to roll the music for Andy's quiz.
Comment les entendre? Question. Comment les voir? Question. Le trou est sans fond? Question. La légende le dit? Question. Elle dit aussi? Question. C'est une maladie? Question.
Ah, bonjour, incroyable. Monsieur Finkel.
Manche two.
Right, what Manche two indeed. What things are you going to hit us with this time, this week, this year?
Well, I think I'm actually quite pleased with what I came up with, because it's in some ways the theme is quite topical, and the theme is dire straits.
Right.
And this is a question about 4 battleships, all of which were sunk in a strait, Strait.
Okay.
And the answer to the quiz is what strait they were sunk in, and for a bonus point or ego or whatever, what year. So I'm going to list these. I'll give you the name of the ship and its nationality in the chronological order of when they were sunk. And then, the answer is what straits they were sunk in and what year. So the first one,
okay,
these are all battleships. The first one is a French battleship called the Bouvet, Bouvet.
Oh, Dave's got a clue. Gordon's not sure.
Actually, I've just realised I've got this slightly out of order. The next one is the one that was sunk before the Bouvet, so forgive me, because I added that at the last minute.
Oh, so sorry, we're going to have to start this whole thing again, Andy. That's terrible. We're stuck. No, go on. Second one. Second one, but first one.
Yeah, the first one chronologically is a Russian battleship called the Borodino.
I think I already answered that one as well.
Well, that must have presumably be after the Battle of Borodino. So
that'd be in 1905.
Yes, I'll give you a clue. Battle of Borodino didn't feature any battleships.
No, true, exactly. But the ship must have been named after the battle.
Clue,
so yeah,
none of these straits. The answer to none of these straits is the Straits of Hormuz either. So
okay, all right, that's another good one.
Clues can't be fairer than that. Right.
Yep.
The third one, definitely, is an Italian battleship called the Roma.
That's sunk in a strait.
Sunk in a strait. And the fourth one is a Japanese battleship called the Yamashiro. Some of you've probably visited. I imagine.
Yeah, no, I didn't visit any sunken battleships. My holiday was remarkably light on military stuff.
But there's probably a province or a town or somewhere called Yamashiro in Japan.
I probably went through it in a Shinkansen. It's probably a station or something like that. Okay, then. Well, look, c'est bon. Let's roll some music, and then we shall move on to the final stage of this speedily delivered podcast.
Question, comment les voir? Question, le trou est sans fond. Question, la légende le dit. Question, elle dit aussi. Question, c'est une maladie.
Okay, then. Well, welcome back. After the quiz, there's all four of us here, which is all grand. Andy's appeared as if by magic. He is doing his shopkeeper impression after being out for a little bit, and we're here with the exciting news that we picked up from Grandpa Dave in Barcelona that Hervé is considering or starting the long process of wheeling out what will be a version 5 of ADLG, which just looking at the old book, it was 2021 in the front of it. So that's 5 years now, and I suspect 6 years by the time this will actually all play out, given all the hoops that need to be jumped through and the rest of it. And I suspect there is now probably a critical mass of FAQ and tiny corrections and things that have just built up into the silt around playing the game that probably do all need to be shoehorned into a book anyway. But that's not kind of. I think what Hervé seems to have done in the past is to use new editions as an opportunity just to look at some of the troop types and some of the interactions and change not necessarily any of the fundamentals, but just change enough of the bits to make it. To change the balance and to make you look at lists again and just freshen up the game really, and it's done that pretty well. So with that in mind, it seems a good opportunity for all of us to all stick hands up, say, yeah, the FAQs need including, but also what areas or troop types or things would you be kind of keen to see or enthusiastic to see or think need looking at? And I know Dave's already written a list, and so we're going to go to Gordon first, because you're just nodding there going, oh yes, there's something I've got to get off my chest. What stuff would you point the brain's trust at?
Javelins, because I think there's two things can be done with them. The first is, I think that the light medium infantry javelinment is woefully underused, because by and large people think of it as, well, I might be facing Indian elephants. Oh, I'll try and take a couple of javelinmen. They'll never be in the right position, but I'll try it. And there are loads of javelinmen in loads of lists. And I think that's perfectly realistic. But I think that it would be good if they could be, depending on the list, if they could be split into two varieties. There's your plain LMI javelinmen, as we know them at the moment, and then a mixed unit that is either medium sword or medium spear and half javelins. And it could be half javelins in the way that Byzantine bow lance cavalry are. So maybe the javelins are not firing at full strength. Maybe they fire at as if they were mediocre. But I think that would probably be much more interesting. I'd certainly like to take things like that, but also possibly even more realistic for some of the army lists that have got them. And with cavalry, I think it's a shame that there's lots of medium cavalry can take javelins to a battle to throw them, but then drop them on the ground as soon as they get into combat against other cavalry. And they should have some sort of advantage, even if it's just a tiebreaker when fighting predominantly bow-armed cavalry. So something like, and even that suggestion about a mixed unit, there could even be a variety of cavalry unit that is half sword, half javelin, or something, or light spear, half javelin. Perhaps
something needs to be
where
done
rather
with
than the tiebreaker. This is units that are more robustly preparing for a proper fight as well as can skirmish, so that their light spear does give them a permanent +1 against bow-armed cavalry in the first round. But maybe they're cautious about throwing their javelins away, so again they fire at one level lower, so they fire as mediocres.
Yeah, no, I think javelinmen, you're absolutely right. They are specialist anti-elephant troops, aren't they? And that's not right. And having tried to use them in a Numidian army, there's something doesn't kind of work there. I wonder if there's also, is there a question about this whole, because it's a tiny category of light medium infantry that javelinmen and bowmen sit in, and I'm not entirely sure whether it almost feels like the appendix of the development of ADLG, that maybe back in the past before we all started playing it, there were more troops in that category, and it's just sort of withered away to be something that doesn't really achieve much other than the fact it used to be there.
They all got in common that they got
the
missiles and therefore presumably spread out a bit and don't like getting into fisticuffs with people.
Yeah.
But there must be some other kind of not so keen on fighting, but at least bring a sword with them to a battle kind of troops.
Yeah.
So would you, for example, make them as still able to evade, still able to throw a javelin 1 UD, but they'd fight at a factor of 1, but mediocre in melee before adding bonuses?
Yeah. Well, I think maybe from the point of view of this discussion, it's diving into some of the real specifics is, it's a way off, but it's just what are the issues that we're trying to address with something like javelinmen? Because I think that you're right. They're not taken very much, but they were a common troop type. The reason is they can't really stand up in melee, but I think there's also another reason that even as super skirmishers, the fact that they've got to get to 1 means that the risk of them being caught by even heavy foot is kind of just too risky. They can't stand in melee if they fight, but they can't really shoot and evade, because shooting from 1 is a bit of a tricky one. If there was some solution to those two conundrums, that would make them a bit more viable in some way, shape, or form. But because there is that thing with the hybrid, the gradient between light infantry and medium foot who shoot, and the same way as there is between light cavalry and medium cavalry in ADLG, that they're not just two binary different troop types. There's sort of a blurring of them, but there's something there with it. It looks Dave Allen arriving as we speak, if he can do this. So this may be exciting. But okay, Mr. Saunders, have you got any thoughts on javelins? Are they in your to be fixed list?
I think they're having played. The only other set of rules I played a bit of DBM and a bit of fog. So you didn't have javelinmen at all in fog, did you?
You had lateral, and I think that would be about it.
Yeah, that was it, wasn't it? Yeah,
So I think they're an addition. I think we've got more granularity, as I would put it, in ADLG. There's more. You've got troop type and weapon type, which are actual things. And I think you could actually increase that. In the same way you've got Almugavars, who are the only troop type that I know of that are medium spear with impact. And that's trying to develop something on what they are specifically. I think you can bring more of that sort of thing in and more define specific troops by the historical records. I think Richard Case would say he would like to see more historical analysis put into the lists and the troop types. I've always thought there's an argument that legionaries are sort of more or less drilled, impetuous infantry. I know they are, because they're sort of impacts, things like that. That's the way I would put it. And I think you could do that. So you could have javelinmen who are LMI, who just throw darts, throw javelins, and run away. And you can have another troop type entirely, which are medium foot with a javelin.
Yeah.
I think we're talking about bringing the light spear in, which is something from Fog, isn't it? You had the cavalry.
Well, I think it's a name of stuff from Fog, but I think that's a different question. But if we're sticking with the javelinman question for now,
Dave Allen's also pointing out you've got the chariot with javelin, which is actually pretty useless. You've got chariots with impact, you've got chariots with bow, which are legitimate troop types, but the chariot with javelin, as in the ancient British Gaelic, they fire but they don't fight.
Yeah. Well, again, I think there's two separate questions there. I think there's the cavalry with javelin or the chariot with javelin who can shoot, but only at such a short range, it's almost useless. So I think you've then got a question of, but if you turn that into a +1 in combat weapon, suddenly that has a knock-on effect for all other types of cavalry. There aren't many of them, so maybe it doesn't matter. The obvious thing would be it doesn't count against impact, but it gives you a +1 against other troops. But there's so few of them, it doesn't matter. But I don't know. But then there's the javelinmen, who I think there seems to be a bit of a consensus saying it would be nice for javelin armed troops to be able to both skirmish better than light infantry, or to actually have a chance of standing and fighting. And I think those two things are a bit wrapped up because their range
They do
means.
skirmish better than light infantry because they don't get the -1 on their dice for shooting.
But they shoot as skirmishers, but they can still be very easily caught. You've still got to get to one, and then if you evade with them, you roll long or the other troops roll up, they just still get run over. So they can't.
Lightfoot, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the same as Lightfoot, but Lightfoot are just they can evade through people, they can get out of the way. You don't have loads of Lightfoot, but javelinmen are kind of a big troop type.
Yes, it's their extreme vulnerability in practice, because unlike light infantry, you can withdraw through the main battle line. The LMI javelinman has to say, "Excuse me, can you tell me whether some other LMI people we'd like to walk past you?"
Yeah,
that's it's not going to work.
The javelinman, I think, comes from that famous battle on an island where the Greek hoplites were slaughtered.
Bacteria.
That's it. Javelinmen running in and out, and it's great if you're on an island in mountains and you can run away a lot. You're going to kill hoplites, but I took them with me to the world's stupidest army type in the world. They really were useless.
Right. Yeah.
They were just terrible. Yeah. But anyway, yes, yeah. So
a fix for javelinmen is a thing, and we're not quite sure what that is. I think
an expansion and more thought about it. Yes,
more thought about it, and then something to make those javelin-armed cavalry to actually have a bonus in combat, because there's probably few enough of them that they maybe get away with it. But then I suppose there's another whole question. I think Dave, you mentioned something about Mr. Allen. You mentioned something about light spear. That if you stick in another weapon type into the spectrum of cavalry, what does that do for all the rest of them? If you try and jam another weapon type in there that makes A better than B, better than C, better than D.
If you think back to 6th edition and 7th edition even, and before, there was a troop type called Javelin Light Spear.
There was.
Do you remember that? And that had a combined melee and shooting effect. The thing is that then isn't every cavalry a light spear? So
well, apart from
you're paying an extra point for something that doesn't really have an effect.
Because in a way, one of the things I quite like about ADLG is the fact that all cavalry are, I've always assumed they do have a light spear, and that the crap cavalry are just mediocre. But do you need something that different? And also, if you have a light spear bonus, you're messing with the Numidian light horse Roman cavalry interaction, and because the Numidian light horse get a +1 at the moment, but I don't know. Is light spear is there a way to shoehorn another thing in?
I think there is, because if you look at what Simon and I did with the Renaissance rules with cavalry, you've basically got a hierarchy of nastiness of cavalry going from shock to pistol to impact to none of the above. And essentially, if you're fighting something which is a lower grade of those things, you get an advantage against them in the first round of combat only.
But if you stick in, but actually no. But in Renaissance, are there any cavalry with no weapon?
Well, you've got carbine cavalry who don't have a melee bonus.
Yeah,
but they just fight with a normal one factor for being cavalry and bonus. So
you've got carbine cavalry who are sort of
in
skirmishing
ADLG,
cavalry.
they're medium cavalry, aren't they?
Well, it could be heavy, but yeah. So even things like Ottoman Sipahi and stuff have got a bow, but they may not have a lance.
Yeah.
So you've got cavalry that basically shoot it, but don't have any sort of particular melee bonus. And they fight the factor of 1 like most ADLG cavalry.
Yeah.
If they're facing impact cavalry, which is basically guys with lances, then the impact gets up 1 in the melee.
Yeah.
But a pistol will trump
the impact.
Pardon the term. Impact in the first round.
Yeah.
And shock will, beat any of them. So if you've got impact or shock or pistol, then depending on what you're up against, you may get an advantage, but only in the first round.
Yeah. So that if you translated that back to ancients, then you'd have vanilla cavalry, then you'd have cavalry with light spear, then you'd have cavalry with impact, and then you'd get knights.
Or impetuous even, yes. Yeah. You could even bring in the difference between impetuous and impact if you wanted to, although I wouldn't think you'd want to really, but I'm just saying in theory you could,
But I guess the question is that necessary in ancients? Because you've got impact and then you've got knightly impact, because that gets an extra factor anyway, and then you've got then everything else is
and don't forget cataphracts against are have the effect against cavalry but not against knights, so it's I think it's probably enough granularity at the moment.
But which cavalry would be left behind without light spear, I suppose? Or would you give it to bow cavalry?
I envisage being down at the bottom are those who are primarily bow armed, that they want to be able to shoot people from a distance. And this probably doesn't apply to all primarily bow armed cavalry. There'd be some that maybe you'd want to give them an honorary light spear because just that's historically what we've got some records suggest they did.
But for example, Mongols, but they must have had a hand-to-hand fighting weapon.
Yeah. So it's probably a category of average cavalry who we know nothing about, but we assumed that they came with a bow and they didn't really want to do anything other than use their bow. They would be at the bottom. But Sipahi, then
aren't those just medium cavalry bow? Aren't they medium cavalry bow at the moment? And then the better ones with a melee weapon are kind of superior or elite heavy cavalry with bow, because they can sort of stand up, can't they? I don't know.
I think in the ancients period, as opposed to sort of medieval getting on towards Renaissance, relatively few cavalry had swords. They would bring a stick, but it's depending on whether they wanted to throw it and then gallop away or hang on to it and poke at somebody with it.
I thought it might be something like you have Byzantine lance impact half bow at the moment.
Yeah.
You put bow light spear would be the equivalent of bow half impact. So that they shoot at their existing standard and they fight at one level below.
But you've already got that granularity because knights are a 2 against cavalry. So the knight is always better.
No, it's the fact that you can have good quality shooting with a melee weapon.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I guess
there's an argument to say that, that a Sassanid cavalryman and a Byzantine cavalryman, their principal weapons was to shoot with their bows. And then they would only use their lance, and I say that with inverted commas for anybody who's not got a video, at the final stage to inflict a rout, or it's a discretionary weapon. But I think you've got that factor already inbuilt in the rules, because the troops which really did charge them and fuck them up as such are the knights. They would hold their own against.
But I think again, maybe there's a different question.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a different question. Once you get into the knight period, maybe if we just focus this on the cavalry period, I wonder if if you give some bow cavalry a, let's call it a better than nothing but not as good as impact weapon, you're going to want to charge in against bow armed cavalry who don't have that, rather than standing out and shoot them. Whereas at the moment, your elite and heavy cavalry bow would stand and shoot against medium cavalry bow, because they're going to beat them up anyway. In some ways, I don't know whether you've already got that distinction in the rules, because of elite and armor is giving you quite a lot of grading anyway. Sticking in another magic weapon that incentivizes you to charge in, but it's a complicated one. I don't think it's a no-brainer to shoot. I don't know whether you'd be working hard to try and create an opportunity for it, and then leaving behind just a very small number of cavalry who don't qualify for it, that you might as well just call the alternative. Would just call them mediocre.
This means war.
I think you end up by adding what we're using the word granularity.
Yeah.
What you do, the danger is that you end up with certain troop types and therefore certain armies which become completely non-functioning. And at the moment, that happens with spearmen.
Yeah.
Spearmen have their place, but you're not going to see a Greek hoplite army even in the classical period. No. They're not going to fight. You're not going to go, a classical Greek, a Hellenistic Greek army without pike is not going to be an army you use to fight Achaemenids. It's not an army you're going to use to fight.
Well, I think that's another one that probably would be on my list to fix. Is spearmen at the moment are specialist anti-cavalry weapons, anti-cavalry troops, and that isn't right. But what do you do to spearmen to fix them?
I would certainly give certain spear. So in fog, we had defensive spear and offensive spear.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the ones I wrote down. No, I'm not trying to say that a Spartan hoplite should suddenly become as good as a Macedonian phalangite, but something along those lines where you have offensive spear and defensive spear. So, the Dark Ages barbarian spearmen, something like your Lombards and things like that, are defensive spear. And there are certain spear troops which are offensive, particularly hoplites.
So is it that all spearmen are defensive, but then some get
an aggressive spearman is slightly different, because we've fairly strong sources for suggesting that the traditional hoplite in Greece, anyway, before they went any further away, wanted to charge each other. So there's an impact of some kind. They didn't see their job as to form a schultron to see off cavalry, because the cavalry were so pathetic in their original environment. But their behavior against other spearmen was extremely aggressive. I don't think that should make them impetuous, but I do think they should have a plus when they come across, if it was ever an open competition, against, say, French spearmen of the Middle Ages, whose job was
is this a kind of, this one, Andy, is this one where that kind of ADLG Renaissance grading comes in that some spearmen get an offensive plus, which maybe doesn't apply against troops with impact, and doesn't apply
It would
against
never be
mounted.
good enough to take on cavalry if you charge them. No.
Yeah, or even legionaries. You leave the legionary interaction as it is, or you maybe leave the pikeman interaction as it is, but possibly. But then it's first round only, isn't it? You give them some types of spearmen can get a +1 in the first round against some types of opponents.
Well,
but it's cancelled by impact or whatever.
What we do in the Renaissance rules is that units which are some units are classed for melee purposes as spear and some as pike. So, for example, your typical pike and shot formation of the mid-17th century English Civil War, 30 Years' War stuff, they actually fight in melee as if they're spearmen, whereas a tercio will fight as a pikeman. And that's the only differentiation. That's mainly because, obviously tercios were bigger, deeper formations with more guys with pointy sticks in them.
I suppose maybe there's an argument for those deep Theban formations being pike, but most spearmen's just such an iconic category. I wonder though if there's a thing about
the way you can do it is by just you can increase the granularity, to use that horrible word again, in the lists and say, okay, the Spartans get a very limited 0 to 6 bases of impact spearmen who are the full Spartans. You don't have to say, right, the whole army is Spartan, they're all elite impact spear. You say a Spartan army would actually consist mostly of ordinary spear, a few periloiki who are elite spear, and then a hard edge who are the full Spartan who are impact elite spear, if you see where I'm coming from.
Well, I think whether you make them elite or not is up to you, but I do like the idea of impact spear for particularly well-drilled spearmen, like, for example, Theban Sacred Band, who, if you had them, you'd probably make them elite anyway. But your impact spearmen, which would give you a +1 in melee, could be particularly well-trained hoplites.
And it gives them the opportunity to stand up against impetuous elites, like something like, whereas the rest of the army aren't going to do so well, the certain hardcore of those armies are going to be able to stand up to
Galatians, things like that.
Galatians, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So that's actually saying that there's a solution that is as much list based as broad brush category based. It's gonna.
I think all the problems are list based, but I think this is a specifically a quality solution to certain kinds of hoplites, specifically, say, Spartans. A very rare ability, a bit like Almugavars of their day. But I think that the granularity is much more of an issue when it comes to non-elite troops, because earlier on a couple of people had said, well, isn't that solved by just saying some cavalry are elite and armored? Well, I think that when you come to a lot of medium cavalry javelin lists, which exist at the moment for, say, the Mossi, Lithuanians, who else, Bretons, it's the bulk of the list needs addressing about what's the reason for anybody taking this army at all, and how should it interact with a less capable melee army, but only by just a little bit, but which outshoots the hell out of the Lithuanians, for instance, just bow-armed cavalry.
Yeah.
So granularity, I think, is something that should work across the whole rule book, and some army lists will be significantly, I hope, improved by it.
Yeah.
And then occasionally there is a special commendation, if you like, or recognition for certain elite units in a small number of lists. We're saying, these people actually should have something like impact in certain circumstances. Against,
I suppose with the Mongols or the Byzantines, those 4 Khan's Guard or Bukhari, there's only 4 of them in almost all those lists, but the fact they exist makes a huge difference to the flavour and the viability of the whole list. So
totally. It's the one you put your included general into, and you save money by doing so.
Yeah, exactly.
I say the same thing about Huns. I think the way the Hun list works, I think Huns were not terrifying. Huns were terrifying, absolutely terrifying to everybody they came up against. And that wasn't because they were incredibly good at shooting. It was because they charged home as well. So I think, I know we have 0 to 3 Hun nobles. I would say that they should be impact bow elite because they are, and I think you should have a 0 to 3 in the medium cavalry Huns who are also bow impact as well. I think you can put more troop types into the list. I'm not an expert on rules and how to overbalance it. I think we've got to say at this point that what Hervé and the DT team have done with creating a set of rules where most armies are viable is extraordinarily effective, and it's a fantastic.
Oh God, that's got to be protected at all points.
Yeah, they've achieved something remarkable here. But I think by a mixture of adding different troop types, troop weapons, things like that, but limiting them via the lists, like you're saying, Tim. There's only say 3 or 4 armies which get the elite bow impact, and that's one list of the Byzantines, maybe 2 lists of the Byzantines, the Mongols. But I think you could put a few more of those in.
There are about 6.
On the wrong concept here for version 5, or is the main purpose of version 5 to clear up things in version 4 which are still
I think the truth is, Andy, we don't know. But looking at the way this, for example,
confirmation rules is still issues
I
about that.
think looking at the way it's been done in the past, I think point 1 is to make an assumption that all of those FAQs and things will as many as can be done, because there's always things that creep through the gaps, usual caveats apply. But a lot of that stuff will just be cleared up as almost the baseline. But Hervé always has got a track record of using a new edition to move on, bring in some new ideas and freshen the whole thing up as well. Rather, it's not just a tidy up and a new print; it's a freshen up as well. So
this means war.
Okay, so we're into the final stages of this as time ticks on. So I think there's just probably one more troop type I'd suggest we chew over, which is cataphracts, and I wonder, they just don't quite work right, and I wonder if part of that is the mix of armor and impact, and you've got to take them as elite for them to be any good is a bit tricky.
Oh, totally.
And I think also there might be a historical research thing that's come out that suggests that a lot of things we call cataphracts were not just unmaneuverable anti-infantry tanks. They were fully armored cavalry.
Yeah.
Right.
So something
cataphracts appear under the Parthians, and from the Parthians they go into the Palmyrans, and from the Palmyrans they go to the Romans, and they are heavily armoured cavalry who are used against infantry.
Yes, which is very different from the Tibetan.
Not going around charging they're not even charging other cataphracts that we know of. I think you could say that cataphracts in the Far East are completely something separate. That's a separate subject in itself. But cataphracts, when we look at the originality, you could go back and say about the Seleucid cataphracts. They're really used against infantry.
Yes,
so I think that works well where they've got the impact. I think one of the issues is I think they're too good against other cavalry because they have the impact. But I don't. I see.
Is that because this is one class that is being used to describe 2 types of cavalry?
Yeah,
and if you had a fully armored cavalry category, heavily armored cavalry, that would sort of separate it out all the later ones. And I sit here with a vested interest in a medieval and feudal Russian army that is lovely, but utterly useless because it's got heavy cavalry impact in an era of knights, and so it's just a difficult. But if you had some of those types of cavalry able to be fully armored cavalry, it's not a particularly offensive thing, but it makes them better than heavy cavalry. But it makes them able to maybe stand up against even medium knights.
Hang on.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean,
I don't think Russian boyar heavy cavalry are. They're certainly not cataphracts, and they're certainly not heavily armored. And quite frankly, they got minced by everybody they faced.
All right, so I've just bought a rubbish army, but whether there's,
I know where you're coming from, but then I think this is one of Richard Case's bugbears, that the game has to be historical. And by being historical, I think you keep it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good introduction to when we start recording, to say, and another troop type is cataphracts, because there's at least two kinds of troop types in there. And
we're recording now. This is real. This is yeah. But I think
sorry.
It's all right. No, don't worry. So there are two types of cataphracts, really. Cataphracts is the issue. Actually, we've been joined by Dave and Andy. We were just chewing over the idea that cataphract is probably one of the last thing that we've got time to chew over, in that cataphracts at the moment is being used for the anti-infantry tank troops of the Parthians, but also some other stuff in the east that just performs in a totally different way, and there's probably some solution around separating out cataphracts into a couple of categories. Now, should the old school cataphracts still be unmaneuverable and stuff like that? Should they be as good against cavalry? Or should that be the later, abilities?
I think they should be unmaneuverable. I mean, to my knowledge, I think you've got to look. I think you're right. You need to separate out what happens in the Far East, in China and in Korea and places like that, from what happens between the Parthians, Palmyrans, Sassanids, Romans,
Armenians,
and Armenians. Yes, that's true, and probably the Seleucids and the Hellenistic cataphracts. Troop type. I mean, without throwing cats into pigeons and stuff. I mean, you could almost say there's another category of heavily armored cavalry with impact, and so that's your Korean charging cavalry with more armor than a Mongol.
Some of whom can dismount as heavily armored bowmen if they want to. Yeah,
and I think that might cover the Tibetans, because I don't know much about Tibetan cataphracts, to be honest, and I wouldn't know where the sources were for that. So
that's a tricky one, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. So cataphracts probably needs looking at. Maybe it's two separate categories. It's interesting stuff.
The Hellenistic one with a very long spear that probably reaches further than any other cavalryman was carrying. That would be really intimidating. So I think if they do fight cavalry head on, they should have an advantage, just because they've got almost impenetrable armor and they've got a longer spear.
Yeah, but at the moment, cavalry can avoid them, so it doesn't happen too often. But there's probably something to be done. All right. Well, look, let's wrap up that segment on Ulysses, because we could do this forever and go around in circles, and it's still super early processes.
Hervé's giving himself a massive. If he listens to this, he's going to have even more confusion.
That's the plan. That is the plan.
Going to be even more. Yeah. I think we all admire him for his ability to turn up with a new version which works. I mean, we were all worried about Light Horse having zones of control, but I would wonder about the Light Horse zone of control, whether that's become very, very powerful, hasn't it?
Yeah, maybe that needs diluting a bit in some way, shape, or form. But
I think bow has become incredibly powerful. But then it's all scissors, paper, stones. At the end of the day, you've got to have some sort of granularity to make a difference between everything.
Yeah.
Or else you sit there and roll dice. And everything's just on the dice.
Well, look, I was thinking on the light horse zone of control. If you had, they would only have zones of control over heavier troops if they were too deep. And it sounds a bit mad, but that means that there's a substantial body of troops behind you.
Or
I think there's not being able to.
I think there's definitely a way to defang it for sure, and it just needs to be
they only have
tweaked
a
a little
zone
bit.
of control against cavalry, but not against infantry.
Well, something like that. So one of those options, I think. But I think, in terms of options, the option is let's listen to some French music and get the results from Andy's quiz before we wrap up this podcast. So, bit of French music.
Question, comment les voir? Question, le trou est sans fond? Question, la légende le dit? Question, elle dit aussi? Question, c'est une maladie? Question.
Right, we're back, Mr. Finkel. Can you hit us with your quiz answers, and we'll kind of try and get you off mute at the moment as you sit there talking to us on your phone now. So.
Yeah, I will hit you with the questions again, so we'll see if any of you know the answers. Just to refresh the ideas, these are all battleships which were sunk in Straits, and I wanted to know what strait and ideally in what year. So the first one is the battleship Borodino, which is Russian. Anyone know?
Tsushima.
Correct. Do you know what year?
1905.
Yep, spot on. It actually blew up.
Wait a minute, son. Killer Dolphins have got that one. All right, strike one for the Suicide Dolphins.
Right, okay. The second one was the French battleship the Bouvet.
Yes, I know the answer to that one.
Go on.
1916.
Gallipoli, Dardanelles.
Yeah, 1915. But yes, it was a Dardanelles. It struck a mine.
Mainly because I was watching Peter Hegseth's press conference and thinking exactly about the Dardanelles whilst I was.
Gazing at Pete Hegseth and thinking about the Dardanelles, Dave, is a T-shirt waiting to happen. So, right, Andy, third question. Third
one was an Italian battleship called the Roma.
When did that sink? Probably
Second
World War?
Messina.
1940, 41, was it?
It was 1943 in the San Bonifacio Strait. That's between Corsica and Sardinia. And it was actually the first ship ever sunk by a guided missile.
Ooh.
Wow. Oh, okay.
The Germans had a thing called the Fritz X, which they launched from a bomber, and it was kind of a jet-propelled missile bomb thing with strings attached to it, or wire-guided.
Museum.
All right.
Pardon?
Okay.
One in the RAF Museum.
Yeah. Right.
It could well be.
So that was
and the final one. The final one.
Final one was a Japanese battleship called the Yamashiro.
That's got to be
the Second World War, hasn't it?
So
yep.
You'd have to think it's something like
45.
Guadalcanal.
No, it was in 1944 and a place called the Surigao Strait, which was part of the overall Battle of Leyte Gulf when the Americans invaded the Philippines, and the Japanese sent out what was left of their fleet to fight them. And there was about 3 or 4 different naval actions, and one of them was in a place called the Surigao Strait between 2 of the Philippine islands, and it was basically the last battleship versus battleship fight in history.
Question, comment les voir? Question, le trou est sans fond? Question, la légende le dit? Question, elle dit aussi? Question, c'est une maladie? Question.
Wow. And it looks like just onto our video screen, returning like MacArthur, we've got Richard Case and his. Then they should be mirror shades or something. You should be wearing the hat. But I mean, say that you've arrived just as we're finishing because we've been wittering on for 2 hours. But look, your backdrop's fantastic. The MacArthurism is wonderful. You can claim the victory for this podcast. So a delight to see you, Richard. Welcome.
Hi and bye from the sound of it.
Well,
yeah.
You might want an extra addendum to this because we were talking about the fact that there might be a version 5 coming out.
Yes. Well, I think there are lots of tweaks that might happily be made.
Yeah. Well, I think you should listen to the podcast. You'll hear what we talked about. But the gist of it was
I will.
we're assuming that all the FAQ stuff and corners will be knocked off as much as possible, and that Hervé will do some more material kind of changes and rebalances. And we were just talking about what we probably want to get done. And I think our list was, in no particular order, javelin men need to be kind of sorted so they're a bit more useful. Spears need to be sorted so that they're no longer just anti-cavalry defensive weapons. Cataphracts might well be two different classes. And the question about, do you shoehorn in another weapon for cavalry over and above the handful that are armed with javelin to do some other differentiation, is a one where we went round and round in Cantabrian circle, I think, on that one, and we weren't quite sure where we got to. But those were our 4 or 5 big topics of, probably something to look at.
I have 3.
3. Go on then, tweaking it.
One would be counting the slide when you're not moving into combat, because I think people are able to really move. If they slide and then wheel,
they can turn, can't they?
They can move a long way sideways, and I think that slide should be included in the movement. I think all troops, it should cost 2 UDs to make a quarter turn, but not a half turn, because I think it encourages way more lateral movement than was historical. And I think missile support should be more expensive, but should allow the unit to shoot like light infantry.
Or have 2 kinds of it.
Because I think the lines of supported spear historically were there not just to resist cavalry, but to shoot off light horse, like the Russ and so on. And the order of battle against the Alans, the Roman infantry is clearly shooting, not just there for receiving impact. So I would make it, say, 3 points.
Could you give Romans? Could you give Romans the option to make some of those troops half and half, heavy infantry?
I would say at a certain point, Roman infantry lose their impact value and shoot instead.
Well, to me, it's a bit like with cavalry, where we've gone from just bow or impact. We had the double weapons like the Mongols, where you are impact bow, but we have the Byzantines, which are impact half bow.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of troops like late Roman infantry, Assyrians, some of the Chinese, where they shouldn't necessarily be half and half, but they need some ranged shooting, and they either need to pay points for that or be weaker in hand-to-hand. But I think there's a whole class in multiple periods of history which need a shooting capability, and by their nature are then tend to be infantry that receive attacks rather than make attacks.
Okay. All right.
Is that not going to slow the game? Well, was that not going to slow the game down a lot with a lot more dice rolling? And also, if you've got troops shooting as light infantry against light cavalry, they've got to beat them by 3 on the dice to hit them. So how often is that going to happen? And that assumes
it stops the light horse just sitting there, and it stops the infantry having to charge them to drive them off. That's
okay. Yeah. Interesting for game balance. All right. Well, look, I wish we had more time to do that, but we definitely wish we had more time to discuss that. We will. Probably come back and do some more of these, I think, because it's interesting, particularly as if and as and when any details do emerge. So
our listener might have a few ideas.
Yeah, our listeners might have a few ideas. Good luck to them. No, both of them.
He might do.
So I will rush off and edit this, and we'll see if we can get this out before campaign, and see if anyone's actually waded through it to listen to it, to talk to us when we're all there. So thank you, everybody, for coming along. Right, on that note, with no one being arrested, it's a bit like the end of Top Gear. I will love you all to leave you, and we'll see you for the next one. Goodbye.
This means war.
is that they're definitely in my bushes.
Yeah, and that's the post edits quote.